At noon on August 15, 1945, Vice Admiral Matome Ugaki sat in his quarters at the Fifth Airfleet headquarters in Koya, Kyushu. The room was quiet, save for the crackling of the radio. Across Japan, citizens and soldiers alike were listening to a voice that would mark the end of an era. Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender. The war that had engulfed the Pacific for nearly 4 years was over. Yet for Ugaki, the moment brought neither relief nor comfort. It brought resolve. Ugaki opened his diary, the Sensoru, which he had kept meticulously since October 1941. 731 pages chronicled nearly every day of the Pacific War, from strategic planning under Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto to the battleship divisions and airfleet commands he later led. Each page was a record of operations, assessments, and personal reflection. This final entry, however, would be unlike any before. He wrote, no ceasefire orders had reached him yet. He blamed himself for Japan's inability to halt the American advance, and he resolved to undertake one final mission, personally flying into combat to demonstrate the indomitable spirit of Bushido, the warrior's code. Transition, low dramatic music, archival sounds of naval traffic and aircraft engines. What Ugaki did not explicitly write in that last entry, but what the diary reveals over 4 years, is a slow and methodical realization that Japan could not win this war. Not because the sailors lacked courage, nor because Japanese tactics were flawed, but because American industrial capacity had made victory mathematically impossible. The first clear moment came after the Battle of Midway in June 1942. Midway had been catastrophic. 4 Japanese fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiru, had been sunk in a single day. They had participated in the Pearl Harbor attack just 6 months prior. Along with these ships, 248 carrier aircraft, and over 3,000 men, many of them elite, highly trained pilots, were lost. Ugaki, as chief of staff under Yamamoto, had helped plan the Midway operation. The strategy had been sound: lure the Americans into a decisive engagement, destroy their carriers, secure the Central Pacific. But it failed. American dive bombers, having deciphered Japanese plans, struck at the most vulnerable moment. Aircraft were refueling and rearming on deck. The infernos that followed consumed ships, men, and Japan's strategic momentum. He recorded in his diary, "Thus the distressing day of June 5 came to an end. Let this day be the only one of the greatest failures of my life." Ugaki initially believed this was a temporary setback. Japan still had formidable surface forces. Carriers could, theoretically, be replaced. Pilots could be trained. Victory was still possible. But the reports coming in from naval intelligence painted a different picture. By late June 1942, intelligence assessments revealed the staggering scale of American industrial production. Escort carriers were being completed every 3 weeks. Fleet carriers were being built in shipyards stretching from Virginia to California. Cruisers, destroyers, submarines, the numbers kept rising. For Japan, every loss was permanent. For the Americans, every defeat was quickly replaced. Ugaki began to understand what Yamamoto had long feared. Japan could not win a war against a nation that could replace ships and aircraft faster than they could be destroyed. By 1944, the disparity was breathtaking. The Americans had completed 17 Essex-class fleet carriers, each with 27,000 tons of displacement and over 90 aircraft. Japan had built 6 carriers in 3 years. American shipyards could churn out Liberty ships at a rate of 1 every 42 days, some as fast as 4 days and 15 hours for propaganda purposes. Battleships that would have taken 2 years to build in Japan were being launched in 10 months by U.S. yards operating around the clock. Aircraft production was equally staggering. Boeing, Douglas, Lockheed, and Grumman plants were producing bombers and fighters at record pace. The Ford Willow Run plant in Michigan produced B-24 Liberator bombers at the rate of one every 63 minutes. By 1944, shortages were nearly non-existent for the U.S. A stark contrast to Japan, which struggled with fuel, parts, and trained personnel. Ugaki observed these developments with growing despair. The loss of experienced pilots, the inability to replace carriers, the relentless expansion of the U.S. fleet. It was a mathematics of defeat, clear in cold statistics, impossible to argue with. Transition. Battle sounds, distant explosions. The Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944, the so-called Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, was emblematic. Japan lost 3 carriers and hundreds of aircraft, while the U.S. fleet lost not a single carrier. Battleships, once the pride of any navy, were now secondary. Carriers dominated, and Japan's carriers, like the Tai-Ho, lasted mere months before destruction by a single torpedo combined with fuel vapor explosions. Then came Leyte Gulf, in October 1944. The battleship Musashi, Yamato's sister, was overwhelmed by coordinated waves of carrier aircraft. Despite its massive 72,000-ton displacement and 18-inch guns, it sank under bombardment, proof that no ship, no matter how formidable, could withstand America's industrial and technological might. By February 1945, Ugaki commanded the Fifth Airfleet in Kyushu, mostly composed of land-based aircraft. Fuel shortages, lack of trained pilots, and diminished aircraft numbers forced Japan to adopt kamikaze tactics. Young pilots, often barely trained, were sent on suicide missions against overwhelmingly superior American forces. These missions, while causing some damage, could not stop the tide. The Americans simply had too many ships, too many planes, too much capacity. On April 7, 1945, the Yamato herself made her final sortie, a one-way mission to Okinawa. Detected by American submarines and attacked by hundreds of aircraft, she was destroyed in less than 2 hours. Over 3,000 men died, a grim testament to the futility of fighting against a logistical and industrial juggernaut. By August 1945, Ugaki's diary entries reflected resignation. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the Soviet invasion of Manchuria, the collapse of Japan's remaining forces, it was all documented with meticulous honesty. Yet Ugaki, ever faithful to the warrior's code, resolved to fly one final kamikaze mission, to demonstrate honor and resolve even in inevitable defeat. He posed for photographs, removed his rank insignia, and took with him the ceremonial short sword given by Yamamoto. On August 15, 1945, he climbed into a Yokosuka D-4Y-4 Judy dive bomber, accompanied by a young radio man and a lieutenant. 10 other aircraft flew alongside. His final message at 1924 hours reported the attack commencing. No American records indicate damage. Ugaki's plane never returned, and his body was never recovered. Closing scene, slow, solemn music, fade to quiet ocean waves. Ugaki's diary, later translated and published as Fading Victory, offers a rare, unflinching look into the mind of a commander who understood the impossible odds Japan faced, yet continued to fight. His observations on industrial capacity, pilot quality, and strategic futility reveal the true reason Japan lost the Pacific War. Not failures of courage or skill, but mathematics of production and logistics. Wars, in the end, are decided not only by valor on the battlefield, but by the capacity to sustain that valor. Ugaki's story reminds us of the human face behind these calculations. Men who fought, obeyed, and died because duty demanded it, even when defeat was inevitable. If you found this story compelling, take a moment to like this video. It helps us share more forgotten stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to stay connected with untold histories, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. From Tokyo to Texas, from veterans to enthusiasts, each story matters. And each deserves to be remembered. Thank you for helping keep these histories alive. As the final pages of Ugaki's diary close, we are left with more than a record of battles, losses, or strategic miscalculations. We are left with a portrait of a man caught between duty and inevitability, someone who understood the outcome long before Japan's final surrender, yet continued forward because that was the burden of command. His reflections expose the deeper truth of the Pacific War, that courage alone cannot overcome industrial might, and determination cannot replace fuel, ships, or pilots. Ugaki's last flight did not change the course of history, but it captured the spirit of a generation shaped by loyalty, sacrifice, and an unbreakable sense of honor. His story, preserved in ink and memory, reminds us that behind every strategy and every statistic are human beings who believed they were fighting for something greater than themselves. As we look back today, we honor not the war, but the lessons it left behind, the weight of leadership, the cost of pride, and the unforgiving arithmetic of modern warfare. These stories endure so that the world may never repeat the tragedies that shaped them.